Okay, hello everybody. My name is Van, and today I'm going to share with you some of my experiences in co-teaching. Before I start, let me make sure that everybody get a slip of paper. Yes, that was for me. Sorry, Antonio, for disrupting. I think co-teaching is a very touchy subject today, especially when you guys have your co-teacher in the room, possibly. So during my presentation, if anytime you come up with any question you want to know, feel free to write down your question on the paper, and at the end of my presentation, I will collect them, and I will just pick out a few of them just to answer for you, okay? Successful co-teaching. Let me start by saying I am not an expert. I am very far from an expert in co-teaching. And today I'm only here to share about my personal experience with you. And a lot of what I say may not apply to your situation, and that's perfectly fine. I just want to share with you what I have experienced the past 2 years. I have worked with a total of 4 different co-teachers the past 2 years, and 2 of them are part-time teachers and who only stayed at school for a little bit of time, maybe half the day or more. And the other 2 are full-time teacher, and they are in charge of handling all my personal affairs. And with each of them, they all have very, very different personality, but I think we have worked out a successful system so that we can co-teach effectively together. So first question, let me ask everybody a question. Do you think that co-teachers are like roommates? Yes or no? Right? Can I maybe have a show of hand? How many think that co-teachers are like roommates? Raise your hand. Okay, and what about not? Okay, anybody want to share why or why not? Okay, Antonio.
Yeah, well, usually with a roommate, it's like you compromise. If you use something of your roommate, you make sure to return it in the same spot you picked it up from when you're done with it. The same thing applies to co-teaching. If you take your co-teacher's stapler, you make sure to put her stapler back when you're done with it. Yeah, roommates.
And how about not? Okay.
Anyway, like Thomas, I've been really blessed to have a good co-teacher. And when we leave the room, it's like leaving an apartment. You gotta make sure the fans are off, the lights are off, the windows are closed. And we do that in a way where it's our room, like it's our apartment. So in that way, we're kind of like roommates.
Okay, Tara?
My roommates and I, we see each other for dinner, but our lives are quite separate. And whereas my co-teachers, well, we have a goal, and the goal isn't just to keep the apartment clean. Our goal is actually to teach the children that are in front of us. So I'd say no.
More than.
Sure, more than.
Thank you, Tara. Okay.
Sorry.
So I'm going to share what I think. I think that definitely co-teachers are more than roommates. Because when you're roommates, you're only sharing the space, but you tend to stay out of each other's personal lives, right? You share the space, you share things, but you kind of have your own space. When you're co-teaching, you're in the same room, you're seeing each other every day, almost all day, and a lot of times you have to work together in so many different circumstances to achieve your goals. So I think that's definitely more than roommates. And what I think a co-teaching is, can I see the next slide? Okay, so I think co-teachings are like 2 leaders leading the same organization, 2 writers writing a book, 2 artists working on an artwork together, or 2 chefs preparing for a meal. All of these require a lot of communication and cooperation, compromising, and it's all about teamwork. None of these will be possible without a lot of communication involved, and I think that's the key. Communication is the key. You must be in sync with each other. And when I talk about in sync, I'm thinking if you're working, you have to know each other's personality well enough so that a lot of time you don't even have to say anything. You can kind of know what you're expecting from each other or what you're thinking about. A lot of times when I work with my co-teacher, I can just look at her and we we know what each other are thinking. So I'm not saying that you have to get to that exact point with your co-teacher, but it's a goal to work toward because it's going to make your co-teaching so much easier. And I remember a while back we had a professor, a very good professor who came here, and she did her presentation on co-teaching. And one of the things she said was co-teaching is like a marriage, right? But even worse, I think, is like an arranged marriage. You don't get to know, you don't get to pick your partner. Sometimes you don't even see who your partner is until the day of the wedding, which is the first day of school, right? So it's very difficult. And this is the quote I found on marriage that I think is very useful, and that applies for any kind of relationship. Marriage isn't 50-50. That's a divorce, right? When you split everything 50-50, this is your part, this is my part, I'm going to do this, and then your turn. That's not a marriage, that's not compromising and cooperation. It must be 100 and 100. Each of the person have to give their full commitment and support and love, maybe minus the love, but to serve and just help each other, support each other throughout the whole time. And I know she mentioned some models, different models of co-teaching. Here are just 6 basic models. I'm not going to talk very much about this. I think you guys can just look at this. And there's no best models. I think it's up to you to figure out which one works best for you.
What's your preference, Diane?
I don't really have a preference because I haven't tried all of them yet. So I'm open. Okay, and I have to say, even though I think I've been really, really blessed and fortunate to have wonderful co-teachers to work together with, but it is not easy. I don't think it's easy at all. It's actually easier to work on your own than to have somebody else in the room, despite that extra help you get. And the reason is because there are so many different challenges. The first one is the different in teaching style, philosophies, and a lot of expectations. You are all different individuals, so you guys have all different personalities, and that's going to reflect in your teaching style. And what is important is that when you're working together, I think it's very important to sit down, get to know each other before the students even come in. I think Thomas mentioned that, Peggy mentioned that. Before you even come into the classroom, know what your co-teacher is like, so then you will have less chances to disagree on things later on and offend each other. Sharing of power is also another very difficult thing to do for teachers. I know, because as teachers, you're used to kind of taking authority of our classroom. You are the authority. So having to share that power with somebody else in the room is not an easy thing. And we kind of have to adjust our mindset and think that, oh, there's another power figure in the room. So how are we going to divide up so that we're both equals and not one is superior to the other? A lot of poor co-teaching experience may come from lack of communication and the lack of co-planning time. I think these two go hand in hand together because communication is key. I can't emphasize this enough. You have to make the time to communicate, and you have to set up a time for co-planning. I'm going to cover the co-planning a little bit later on. So, and then let's move on to the next. Is the language. Language and culture barriers, because we're from different countries. We're used to different cultures and lifestyles, so it's very difficult to know when is the right time to do what or say what. A lot of time, especially language. What may sound okay to one language may be very offensive to another language. So I think that's when your culture consideration must come into context. And you really have to think about, put yourself in the other person's shoes, ask that person, what do you think will make sense? Mood. Sometimes you have bad days. Everybody have bad days, and you can come in, and if you bring your bad mood into the classroom, it's not going to be a pleasant teaching atmosphere. It's going to affect everybody. And sometimes if you are feeling really, really grouchy today, you may say something that will hurt somebody's feelings. So I think it's very important to see yourself as a professional. And when you go into the classroom, you need to leave everything behind, out the door, and only shows your professionality. And space, personal space, right? We all need our personal space, especially when we see each other so much. And I know my co-teacher and I right now, we work very well together. We are very good friends. But even then, I feel we still need some space for each other before we will get really tired of each other. So we make sure her desk is all the way at the front of the room and my desk is all the way at the back of the room. So when we need to have our personal space, we have that space and we stay and do our own work. But when we do need to get together and talk, we'll make sure to sit together. I think that's very important. Okay. Now, what is some successful tips for co-teaching? I think first of all, most importantly, is you have to establish a good rapport with your co-teachers. And that was what I was talking about. Getting to know each other before the students even come into the classroom. You need to understand each other's personality, likes, dislikes, what their style is, or even hobbies. Yeah, that's covered. The second one, the teaching style. And 3, you have to discuss your strengths and weaknesses. I would always want to sit down with my co-teacher and tell her, okay, this is what I think I would really like to cover. These are the things I would like to do with my students, but these are my weaknesses. I'm not very good at this, so maybe I would need your help in this. And I would ask otherwise, So you have to share your strengths and weaknesses and be honest about them. And then together, you two have to come up with what is your goal, your common goal towards your student. And so you can create a plan of action. How are you going to carry out that plan? And in a little bit, I'll show you what I mean by that. And 6, take risks and grow. Because you have another person in the room, that's a great opportunity for you to experiment with many different ideas and teaching techniques. So just experiment it, and you can rely on each other for support. Then you can grow and learn from that. Okay, so I created a recipe for the perfect, co-teaching relationship, or I think this recipe actually applies to any type of relationship. You have to have support, time. You definitely have to commit your time. Honesty, you have to be honest about what you think. Don't wait until much later on to tell your co-teacher what is bothering you, because as you bottle it up, small issues can become bigger and bigger and bigger. So if there's anything, little things, you need to put it out right away, in a very nice way, of course. But if you take care of it and get it out of the way, then there's less chances there will be any big confrontation later on. Equality. That's sharing power between each other, respect, consideration of each other, compromise on things. You don't always get your way, and you just have to find the best way to compromise between the two teachers. Tolerance. You have to tolerate each other, even though, and that kind of ties together with forgiveness. Nobody is perfect. So, of course, we all make mistakes, and I think it's very important to just overlook those little mistakes, tolerate each other and let it go. Then it can be much simpler and makes life easier for everybody. And another one I have over there is tactfulness. I don't know if you know the term, but tactfulness is basically being considerate as to when to act, how and when to act, how to say the right thing at the right time, how to word your ideas, how to express it in a way so it doesn't offend people. So you have to be very tactful and considerate towards the other. Okay, so this one is a cartoon I found online. I think this is very helpful. She said, hey Marcus, I was thinking about what you said yesterday. Maybe we could try a lesson where we could share the load a little bit more. I heard about a lesson template that we might be able to use, and he's answering, great. Let's look at it today when we meet. So there are a lot of good things going on in just this one picture. First of all, she's saying things, putting her opinion as we instead of I, right? As mentioning we, she's giving the idea that they are a team, they are working together. And even though I think she's saying that she wants him to help her a little bit more. She's not saying like, oh, I don't think you're doing enough. I want you to help me, blah, blah, blah. She's saying that, how about we share the load a little bit more? So she's being very tactful about that. She's giving suggestions and ideas of what the possible things they can do. And then when he said, let's look at it today when we meet. So it's very obvious that they have set up a specific meeting time for this discussion and lesson planning. I think that is above one of the most important things you need to do is set up that meeting time. Okay? And this is some example of how I co-teach with my co-teacher. Before the beginning of each semester, I would ask my co-teacher, can we have a formal meeting where we sit down together, and that is going to include all of my co-teachers. Sit down together, we're going to cover, okay, what do we need to teach, what are our goals this semester, and also how we're going to carry out that plan. We have to agree on what are our standards, what is okay for the students to do, what is not okay for the students to do. And then we have to look at our schedule, see when is the best time per week. We have to meet each week, and it's maybe during a break time, 15-minute break, or a period when you're both free, so you can sit down and discuss what is going on for the next week or the next month. I think that's very, very important that you are always up to date on what the other teachers are doing. And then I always like to create a brief semester outline to let my co-teachers know about my teaching schedule. And I'm going to have you help me open up the other document right now. This is an example of a 6th grade outline that I created. It's a lot of work at first, but I think it's worth it in the end because it makes it so much easier for us to co-teach together. You can see the whites are what I'm doing in my classes because I see my students for 1 time a week and she sees them 2 times a week. So it tells her what I'm going to be doing in my classes, and then she can put in what she will be doing for her classes. That way we make sure that we don't overlap on a lesson, we make sure that everything is covered, and if there are any extra events, like special events in the school, we know how to adjust our schedule so that we can still cover everything in time. And it makes it a lot easier if you're honest with each other also. We help each other after the lesson, just kind of think about, oh, what we just did, was it successful or not, what needed to be changed, and so on. And we keep each other updated on our lesson. And I think very important, you have to share, we have to share a lot of things with your co-teachers, not just the room, but you have to share your workload, your ideas with each other. Make sure if you have any good ideas, suggestions, you throw it out there and we can see how we can work it into the lesson. If you have any concerns, you need to share that. Any worries, you can share your teaching experience or what you've learned before, what you think may work better. And besides just the work and the classroom things, you can even share more lighthearted things, like you can share jokes and stories. Treat each other like a friend, not just a co-worker. You can share your interests and talents even, and most importantly, share your food. I think food really lightens up the atmosphere, so I always like to share our food. We actually have a stash in our classroom where we buy food together. We just stash it there for whenever we want to eat. So I think that really helps us create a very warm atmosphere and very friendly atmosphere for each other. Definitely have fun together. I know that this does not apply to everybody. People have family, you're busy, but maybe when you can, try to see your co-teacher outside the classroom. See if you guys have any similar interests or events that are going on that you can attend together. That way you can get to know them as more of an individual rather than just a co-worker. And these are the benefits of co-teaching. There are a lot, so I'm not going to go over these. You can look at it on your own. Please. So I think co-teaching, you're basically just trying to arrive at one ultimate goal. You're working together to improve the educational outcomes of students in an effective way. So whatever you do, you have to consider it is for your students' good, and you have to be committed if you're going to be a teacher. And last, I'm going to end with a quote, teamwork. Very important is overcoming differences to work towards a common goal. That's what you always need to keep in mind. You have to overcome those differences so that you can achieve what you really want to, okay? So now, if you guys have any questions, I'm going to maybe give you a little bit of time to write them down real quick. And can I have somebody help me collect your question? I'm going to pick a few just to answer. Okay. If you guys have any question, like you can drop it in the bag and I can pick out some.
Do you have any questions?
Okay, you have 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, since I'm running out of time, I'm just going to answer maybe a couple of questions. So, first one, do you ever make or accept excuses for not getting together to plan? Okay, that's a very good question. I know, especially for when you have part-time teachers, you're busy, they are out of the school as soon as the lessons are done. But I think that if you are going to be a teacher, you have to give some kind of commitment, or don't be a teacher, you know? So even though my co-teachers are part-time teachers, we were still able to make plans. I have a teacher, he only works half the day. He has all 5 classes, 4 classes in the morning, full. But we can still set up a time to, maybe during one of the long breaks, to sit down on a Tuesday of every week, so we can just quickly go over what is done. So I don't think there should be any excuses. At least once in a while is okay, but should not. And then another question. This one has 2. How do you get co-teachers to dialogue about curriculum with you? And does assessing and rating your co-teacher affect the relationship? I'm going to answer the first one. How to get your co-teachers to dialogue about the curriculum. That's why I think it's important to set up a meeting at the beginning of the semester. So just to lay down each other's expectation. And you can ask your teacher, no, I think that I need to be updated on what's going on in order to plan my lessons. So maybe you can provide me with what you have planned for your lesson. Maybe we update each other on our lesson plans. I have to send in my lesson plan to my teacher, and she will also give me her lesson plans. So that way, it really helps you keep each other on track of what's going on. And the next one is, does assessing or rating your co-teacher affect the relationship? I have to say, I don't like to assess. I don't like to rate, and I don't like to assess, because nobody's perfect. Maybe there's certain thing about my co-teacher may bother me, and I have to reflect. I'm sure there are things about me that bother them too. So we really have to overlook those differences if you can. If it's an issue, however, you have to be honest and find a courteous way to address it before it gets too big.
You assess your co-teachers?
I think they meant.
Oh, you mean like
evaluation? Assess us. I think that's what it's meant. We don't assess our children, but they assess us.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
think that's what it's meant.
Okay, so,
I don't think it's assess. It's
Yes, they have to fill out an evaluation form for us. Yeah, I think that it's on one hand, yes, you have to fill out the evaluation, but on the other hand, the evaluation should not be the first time your co-teacher sees what you're dissatisfied about. Whatever issues you have to let them know about it before the school actually make you fill out the evaluation form. It's all about open communication. So yeah, for the rest of the question, I'm sorry I didn't get to address. Thank you though.